Hi, welcome to Goodbye Grammar Gaffes. This video is about using commas with conjunctions. A conjunction is a word that connects two or more independent clauses, complete sentences, together to make them one longer sentence. These same words also act as connectors, connecting other words, phrases, and subordinate clauses together as well. This can be confusing because we always use a comma before a conjunction, but we only sometimes use one before a connector. These words are and, but, or, nor, for, yet, and so. It might help you to remember these words by using this mnemonic device, the word fanboys. F is for, A is for and, N is for nor, B is for but, O is for or, Y is for yet, and S is for so. Note, these are the only words that can be used as conjunctions. Transitional words like however, therefore, consequently, etc. may often have a comma after the word, but when used between two independent clauses or sentences, they need a semicolon, not a comma. This is a common mistake, leading to the dreaded comma splice run-on. Let's look at examples. Look at the sentence. Dragons have sharp teeth, comma, but they prefer to burn you to death rather than bite you. Here, the subject of the first independent clause is dragons. The verb is have, and the direct object is teeth. The subject of the second independent clause is they. The verb is prefer, and the direct object is the phrase to burn you to death, etc. I use the conjunction but to act as a conjunction and join the two independent clauses, sentences, together to create one longer sentence instead of two shorter ones. Consequently, I used a comma before the conjunction but because that's the rule. Always use a comma before a conjunction. Note, the comma goes before the conjunction, not after it. Here's another example. The dragon ate all the sheep and cows, comma, yet it left the people alone because it hated the taste of humans. Note, there is no comma between sheep and cows because the word and is just connecting the two items, not acting as a conjunction. If there were more than two items in that list, I would have used a comma between the first two items, but there are only two here. But that's a different rule. Here's another example. The enormous snake slithered across the sidewalk, comma, so it could steal Sammy's dog from in front of the house. In this sentence, snake is the subject, slithered is the verb, and there is no direct object. Across the sidewalk is just a prepositional phrase. The subject of the second sentence is it. The verb is could steal, and the direct object is dog. I use the conjunction so to make one sentence out of the two independent clauses, sentences, and therefore must use a comma before the conjunction. Note, in this last sentence in my explanation here, therefore is a transitional word, a type of extra information used after the conjunction, and consequently needs commas around it. It would not be correct to use that without the conjunction, comma, however. Without a conjunction there, using just a transitional word to combine sentences would create the dreaded comma splice. I use transitional words throughout here. See if you can find them. The most common error people make in using a comma while combining two complete sentences is mistaking transitional words for conjunctions. Words like however, therefore, consequently, because, alternately, whenever, and so on are just transitions. They get commas after them when you use them at the beginning of a sentence or around them when you use them in the middle, or before them when you use them at the end, because they are extra information, non-essential items. However, you can't use them as conjunctions to combine sentences. Here's an example. The Kraken destroyed all the boats in the harbor. However, most of the people who had been in the boats were able to swim to shore successfully. That comma before however is a comma splice, making this a run-on. To correct it, I need to put a semicolon there or a comma conjunction. There are actually several correct ways to write this. So I could have written, the Kraken destroyed all the boats in the harbor, semicolon, however, comma, most of the people who had been in the boats were able to swim to shore successfully. Or I could have written, the Kraken destroyed all the boats in the harbor, comma, but most of the people who had been in the boats were able to swim to shore successfully. In this case, that's a conjunction. Or I could have written, even though the Kraken destroyed all the boats in the harbor, comma, most of the people who had been in the boats were able to swim to shore successfully. In this case, I used a subordinate clause at the beginning of the sentence. Another common mistake is to think you are using a conjunction when the second clause doesn't have a subject and is really a subordinate clause instead of an independent one. If there is only one subject in the entire sentence, then you are using the fanboy word as a connector, not a conjunction. Here are some examples. The Kraken is like an octopus, but much larger. There's no comma there because the but is just connecting the octopus, actually the first part of that, to the adjective at the end. The Kraken is like an octopus, comma, but it is much larger. That's a conjunction. In the first sentence, there's only one subject, Kraken. The but there is just connecting the last two words, an adverb and adjective, to the word octopus, which is the object of the word like. Therefore, it doesn't get a comma before it. In the second sentence, but is a conjunction because of the subject it. So we have to put a comma before the but. Here's a quiz. Where does the comma go in the following sentences, or shouldn't there be one in it? 1. The dragon tried to kill the Kraken, but the Kraken lives in the ocean, so the dragon's fire can't reach it. 2. The Kraken tried to kill the dragon, but its tentacles couldn't reach the dragon because the dragon flew away. 3. The mermaids tried to kill the Kraken, however, the monster fled deeper into the ocean. 4. The dragon flew to the mountain and went to sleep in its cave. 5. The villagers rebuilt their houses and farms, for they hoped the dragon was no longer a threat. Here are the answers. 1. The dragon tried to kill the Kraken, comma, but the Kraken lives in the ocean, comma, so the dragon's fire can't reach it. You need a comma before the but here because that's a conjunction. But you also need one before so because that's also a conjunction. This sentence has 3 independent clauses combined by 2 conjunctions. 2. The Kraken tried to kill the dragon, comma, but its tentacles couldn't reach the dragon because the dragon flew away. You need a comma before the but here too, because that's a conjunction. 3. The mermaids tried to kill the Kraken, semicolon, however, comma, the monster fled deeper into the ocean. Here, there should not be a comma before the however. That comma should be a semicolon because however is just a transition word, not a conjunction. 4. The dragon flew to the mountain and went to sleep in its cave. This sentence is correct. There is no second subject after the first verb. Flew and went are both verbs for the same subject, dragon. The and here is just a connector, not a conjunction. 5. The villagers rebuilt their houses and farms, comma, for they hoped the dragon was no longer a threat. There should be a comma before for because that's a conjunction. Good work. Goodbye. If you like this lesson, please hit like and subscribe to get updates when I put out more grammar lessons. Thanks.